Well, thank you so much, Mr. Kondo, and once again, I want to thank President Chinchilla and all the people of Costa Rica for their incredible hospitality. I've already been scouting out where I'm going to stay when I come back here for vacation, but unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave after this forum. But, you know, Arturo and I were discussing backstage the fact that, you know, Inkai, which has such a wonderful reputation throughout the region. I know we have two former alumni who now are presidents of Panama and Guatemala, respectively, that the origination of this idea was when President Kennedy visited 50 years ago. And I think recognized at that time the enormous potential for the private sector as a critical ingredient in progress and development for the hemisphere as a whole, that when you combine good government with a thriving free market, then that was an extraordinary recipe for opportunity for all people. And for me to be able to visit 50 years later and to see how much progress has been made both in the region and in the ties between the United States and Central America, I think indicates that President Kennedy's vision was sound. And it also speaks to, I think, the importance of us continuing to build these kinds of networks and relationships for the future. You know, I've been interviewed several times during the course of my travels, both in Mexico and Central America. And I've emphasized that although I understand why there's been a great focus over the last several years on security issues, security is important. It's very hard to create a strong economy when people are personally feeling insecure. There's been a lot of emphasis on immigration, and I understand why that is. Obviously, it's of great importance to this region and to the United States. We shouldn't lose sight of the critical importance of trade and commerce and business to the prospects both for Costa Rica, the United States, and the entire hemisphere. You know, the United States considers our trading relationships with CAFTA countries, with Mexico, to be of enormous importance. When you look at the scale of business that's being done currently, it's creating jobs in the United States, it's creating jobs here. And what we want to do is to find ways that we can continue to enhance that relationship, how we can get ideas from this region and find ways in which we can improve and foster small business development, medium-sized business development, make this entire region more competitive because, as I said to the leaders of SICA yesterday, we now live in a very competitive 21st century world. And if we do not have effective integration in our hemisphere, if we don't have the best education systems, the best regulatory systems, if we don't coordinate our activities, then we're going to fall behind other regions of the world. And given the talents that I've seen on display and that are evident here, I'm confident that we can compete as long as we're cooperating effectively. So again, I want to thank President Chinchilla for the great hospitality. I want to congratulate Inkai for its wonderful history, and I look forward to taking a few questions, and maybe I'll hear some ideas in this meeting.
Absolutely, and thanks a lot for your words. I was asked, and I was pleased to share with you some of the conclusions from the panels we had yesterday and today. But before that, let me tell you that if you're looking for places to stay next time, our campus in Alajuela is open to you at any time. And I'm sure our students and faculty and friends here will support me on this. Let me share with you, the goal of this forum was to make progress on the Central America agenda in which private sector, public sector, civil society work together to create a better region. Built on this ongoing process I was talking before, on CAPSI, the Central American Private Sector Initiative, on other initiatives that are represented here, We joined forces to understand the challenges for citizen security. We have worked with a number of key partners, the World Bank, the U.S. Department of State, the Woodrow Wilson Center in the U.S., and of course, Inter-American Development Bank, the co-organizer of this forum. One key ally of this process over the past 2 years is also someone who made this forum a possibility, Ambassador Ann Andrew, U.S. Ambassador to Costa Rica, was a key actor in making this happen. Since Ambassador Andrew arrived to Costa Rica, she immediately saw the region as a whole. She saw the opportunities of working as a region, and she saw the need. She knew about the need of private and public partnerships, civil society engagement, and we've worked together for more than 2 years in making that a reality. And today, for us, is a milestone in that ongoing work. The scope and magnitude of the challenges we face require a committed private sector working hand in hand with the public sector, which is why it's fantastic for us to present to you President Chinchilla as President of the Integration System of Central America, and to you, President Obama, of course, of the United States, as well as President Perez and Martinelli here with us today. What is our current thinking in the 3 issues that convened us yesterday and today, both in Cada Campus and here in La Aduana? But first, let me introduce to you, President Obama, President Chinchilla, the group that you have in front of you. So you have about 200 exceptional leaders from Central America, Mexico, and the Dominican Republic. They are men and women from private sector, from civil society. They are a mix of young, energetic leaders and more experienced, energetic leaders. They come from different groups: this private sector initiative, the Central American Leadership Initiative, the Young Global Leaders and the Global Shapers with the World Economic Forum. They represent the AmChams of the region. They represent the trade associations of the region. Some of them are also part of our board of directors at INCAE and our advisory council. They've chosen to participate in this forum because they understand and believe in the need for a process like this in advancing our region's future. For the past 2 days, we worked on 3 issues: logistical integration, securing improved energy for regional growth and inclusion, and finally achieving economic inclusion for youth and women. The challenges are daunting to some extent. So in terms of logistical integration, we move cargo across this region at 11 miles per hour, about 2 miles more than 15 years ago. The same space covered from Guatemala to Panama takes 5 days in Central America, takes 18 hours in the United States. That means that the market doesn't exist for small and medium companies. So Walmart is doing okay, right? But smaller producers of any product and services who could see this as a market just cannot. The market, they are basically excluded from that market. In terms of energy security, there are still millions of Central Americans without access to energy, and our energy matrix is still not the one we need in terms of sustainability. Clearly, Costa Rica has made amazing progress on some of these issues, but we still have more than $20 billion to invest over the next 10 years. And finally, in terms of youth and women inclusion, this is a region that is basically young, and yet unemployment for those under the age of 24 is more than double that of the general population. And women actually face still an economic exclusion that doesn't allow them to have the economic independence to sometimes, for instance, break cycles of violence on one hand, and also cycles of poverty, because especially for the lower income segments of Central America, women are mostly the heads of the families in this region. So we've taken over this day and a half of work together actionable steps, and we had extraordinary panelists who gave us their opinion and perspective. All the audience, all the participants participated and gave inputs to this discussion. Let me report something very important that came out of yesterday and today. And the most important conclusion from the forum for me is the reason for this. Yesterday and again today, it was emphasized that the reason for this forum, the true goal of this forum, is not about billions of dollars of energy investment, is not miles per hour. The goal for this forum is actually creating a different and better region for the future of our people, for the future of every one of our citizens and every one of our people. Our countries are too small and currently too disconnected to bring millions of Central Americans out of poverty. But in order to create a better future, we must act quickly, private sector, public sector, civil society, working together. On logistical integration, we identified border crossings as the most urgent priorities. These are issues in which The Central American governments have already agreed to many things, but still a lot of action still missing. The private sector present here, civil society present here, are saying this is important, but we're willing to work with government in this issue because we know that there are challenges. We know that many of these things are not done, not because we don't want to, but because there are true challenges and true obstacles to their implementation. This, as I said, is crucial for small and medium enterprises. So this is not about creating a market for already operating big companies, but rather to create a market for the Central Americans. The other major urgent issue in terms of logistical integration is the need for a financing mechanism that works regional. When the United States developed the interstate highway system, instead of having each state pay for their piece of the road, it was actually envisioned as a federal project, as a national project. We need that. We have countries with different levels of income in Central America, and unless we figure out how to act regionally on this front, we will never have the logistical infrastructure we need, starting with the roads, but moving on to other things like feeder ports and maybe a regional railroad. That won't happen. It will just remain as an idea unless we find an actual mechanism in which the region can act again as a region. And finally, we need to create social awareness of why integration is important. This is not, again, about Walmart. This is not, again, about the big companies in the region. This is about the small company and consumers. It's estimated that 20% of food costs in the region are related to logistics. 20% of food costs. That means that if we lower those costs, food will be cheaper for our people. That's what this is all about. In terms of improved energy for growth and development, two were the clear priorities in our discussion. One was inclusion of Colombia and Mexico, and through Mexico, potentially the United States, into an electricity interconnected system. That's almost completed, so that's been almost achieved. But the second part that is not yet achieved is a regional market that actually functions as a market. At this point, we have a market that is really small, and we haven't agreed among ourselves, among our countries, in how to guarantee longer-term contracts. And without that, we won't have the investments we need in energy. Without that, we won't have the investments we need in clean and sustainable energy for all. Clearly, one thing that was mentioned relevant to your visit, President Obama, was the importance of natural gas as a potential resource, energy resource. And of course, there are decisions that the United States as a country has to make, but the region sees this as an opportunity. Our conclusion, however, was that without a regional market, those opportunities could not be realized. So it is still about creating the market and bringing it to reality. Finally, in our discussion this morning, in a very efficient reporting system, because it finished like 15 minutes ago, we discussed three major issues for the region. I mentioned youth, women independence, and also early childhood. And they actually work and interact hand in hand. And the most emphasis in the morning was given to early childhood support. Early childhood daycare system, preschool stimulation, nutritional care, all the things that investing in early, young citizens will make a much prosperous society later on, which relates to women economic independence, because as President Chinchillas proposed since her campaigning days, where without a robust daycare system, women cannot enter the labor force in an important way. And so those two are critical to reduce violence cycles, reduce poverty cycles. And the third component is youth economic inclusion. And in that includes both employment and the potential for entrepreneurship. It has been highlighted that a number of companies in the region doing already programs around youth employability, but governments can support that through their vocational training systems, working together with firms who know exactly what kind of training is needed, and having the government and private resources pooled into a massive youth vocational program and hopefully youth entrepreneurship program. On all three fronts, there was also a common theme, the need for improved public institutions, improved capacity in the public sector. Across the region, we have different needs, but across the region, you need to invest in the human capital leading our nations. The private sector actually has an initiative that started in Guatemala a year ago, and I think we need to expand that, regionalize it, work with government, work with multilaterals, and really bring about a public leadership initiative around the region that help us invest in those who actually manage our countries day to day. So what is next? This was an extraordinary event, but what we emphasize is that what matters now is to take action. In CAE, CAPSI, Cali, all the members of this effort are willing and ready to keep working on them until we have the Central America we aspire to, a region we can proudly leave to our children. As you mentioned, ICAI is celebrating its 50th anniversary next year. We were created after President Kennedy's visit 50 years ago. So we are a business school that has been facilitating dialogue, and will continue to do that, hopefully for the next 50 years and beyond. We're very happy to have such a representation of Central American presidents here. President Chinchilla, of course, as president of SICA today, but also President Martinelli and President Perez, who clearly with your presence are saying, we're ready to listen, we're ready to work together. We look forward to deepening that work, to engaging other partners in this effort. I want to propose to everyone here to convene again before the end of the year, to keep working and assess progress before the end of the year, perhaps in the United States. We've already been invited to a ministerial meeting around energy in about a month. Those are great for next steps, and I look forward to taking those steps further. I thank again President Chinchilla and the Costa Rican government for allowing us to be part of this historical journey, this historical visit of President Obama to the region. I look forward to working together with President Martinelli, who will take next the presidency of the integration system, and as you mentioned, an ICAI graduate himself. Finally, let me borrow your words, President Obama. Thinking and working for a truly integrated Central America is our audacity of all. The United States is literally a union of 50 countries working together as one. We can dream of a Central America as a one single market, as a one single energy system, one single society. We will be bold in working to make that a reality. Thank you very much. And with that briefing, I would like to open, we have some time for questions and answers, and I'd like to take some questions from the audience. This is a historic opportunity. Can you please identify yourself and state your question? Alberto, can you wait until we get the microphone close?
Good morning. Alberto Alemán, former Panama Canal Administrator. Border and safe borders are critical to both trade and security. Our borders are low and impede the development of intra regional commerce, creating fewer product options and higher prices for our consumers, as Mr. Country has said. The U.S. appears to have made tremendous advances in maintaining and improving speed, while also ensuring security on its land border. What has been the most valuable to the U.S. in advancing safe and efficient border crossing? And what will the U.S. recommend to the Central American countries to move towards a safe and efficient border that we need?
Well, there's no doubt that we've made progress. More progress needs to be made in improving border security and facilitating speed and efficiency when it comes to trade and commerce. And those two things go hand in hand. You know, both in the United States and on the other side of the border in Mexico, as well as our northern border with Canada. A lot of the press focus is on security and immigration. But one of the arguments that we've made in pursuit of comprehensive immigration reform is that you can't separate out the dangers or challenges or concerns of a border from the enormous opportunities that a well-managed, well-regulated border represents. And so my administration's focus has been, number one, let's make sure that we've got a sound system of immigration, customs, and a regulatory environment in cooperation with Canada and Mexico that, as much as possible, eases the flow of goods and people and services that are legitimate. So, for example, in the North America Leadership Summit that I have with the Mexican president and the Canadian president, a lot of our work centers around how can we continue to find ways to synchronize existing regulations so that we can speed up the movement of goods and services. Are there ways in which there are regular, frequent trading practices that are going on between the countries where we essentially are able to put them on a fast lane as opposed to the more typical travel for tourists or sporadic visitors. And so that regulatory coordination, I think, is number one. Number two is infrastructure. The fact of the matter is that we have massive borders both to the south and to the north. And in order for us to make sure that we're facilitating trade and commerce, we've got to have the best infrastructure, the best portals through which people can go in an efficient, effective, and systematic way that still allows for us to preserve our security and screen out those problematic elements that might cross our borders. And one of the things that I've been talking to President Peña Nieto about on our southern border is, are there ways that we can do more joint infrastructure investment at a time when all countries, not just the United States and Mexico, but I'm sure Costa Rica and Guatemala and Panama, we're always trying to find money somewhere. And when it comes to the border, they're shared. Are there ways in which we can share some of the costs for continual infrastructure upgrades? But the bottom line is it's both the hardware, the infrastructure, but also the software, the regulation that's going to make sure that you've got an effective border system. Comprehensive immigration reform that I'm hopeful we can pass this year, after 30 years, can make an enormous difference in improving what is already a system that's better than it was. But I want to echo what Arturo said about the Central American countries. And this is not unique, by the way, to Central America. You see this in other parts of the world, like in Africa, for example. Sometimes it's easier to transport goods from parts of Central America to the United States than it is from one Central American country to another. The same is true in parts of Africa, where it's easier to ship something to Europe than it is to the country right next door. And to think about working with the Inter-American Development Bank, with the United States, with other partners, how do we build the kind of connectivity and emphasize internal integration and trade and markets? That's going to strengthen you. That'll put you in a more effective position to compete in world markets, and it will allow you then to interface with Mexico and the United States and Colombia and other parts of the hemisphere. Because what I said to the SICA leaders yesterday was, the more integrated we are, the more effective we're going to compete internationally. But that's going to require some investment. I just want to emphasize it's not just building the road or the bridge or the port. It's also having the regulatory structures that make those work.
Thank you very much. Another question? Paula? I'm sorry.
Good morning. My name is Paula Roord, and I am a Central American from Costa Rica, and I am also an MBA student from INCAE. My question is in relation with early childhood support. There is strong consensus in Central America that has been validated by the IDB and INCAE that early childhood support is one of the best investments our countries can make. Yet, we are still struggling trying to provide primary and secondary education coverage to the entire population, and even this is pushing the boundaries of our budgets. So my question is, how can or how should countries invest in this without sacrificing gains in other areas? Thank you.
Well, I'll just say very very briefly that all the science shows that effective, high-quality early childhood education pays more dividends than almost anything else you can do educationally. Because if children get a good start, if they're read to, and their vocabulary is expanding, and they're taught their numbers and their colors and all the basic building blocks, then they're much more likely to succeed. And that's true in the United States, that's true here in Central America. So the way we think about early childhood education is not just as an add-on to our overall education policy. What we're trying to argue in my administration is this is part of our entire education strategy. It starts when the child is born, and increasingly in this knowledge-based economy, it's going to continue even after people have graduated from college, that they're going to have to continue learning. You're right that paying for it is difficult and quality control is difficult. Good quality early childhood education is not just babysitting. It's having trained professionals who know how to stimulate very young children to give them the preparation that they need, which means setting up training programs and making sure they're adequately paid. And in terms of financing, in my State of the Union, because the United States, by the way, we don't have the kind of early childhood education system that I think we should have. And when you compare what we do to some of the more advanced countries in the OECD, we're not where I want us to be. So what I did in the State of the Union was propose that we impose an additional federal tax on cigarettes in order to pay for an expansion for high-quality, universal early childhood education. You get the dual benefit of reducing smoking, which saves on our health care costs, at the same time as we're able to improve early childhood education. Now, whether we're going to be able to get that passed or not, I don't know. It's always a struggle to get new revenue for worthy endeavors, but there's no bigger bang for the buck that you can get than making this investment in early childhood education. So I'm going to keep on arguing for it forcefully.
Arturo, ¿me dejas?
Por favor, presidente.
No puedo dejar de referirme a este tema porque pero en la piedra angular de los programas sociales por qué este programa lo escogimos como quizás el principal en materia política social. Y es que hace unos 5 años, 5 a 6 años, el INCAE precisamente convocó a un grupo de sabios sobre el desarrollo de distintas partes del mundo con financiamiento del Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo y del Banco Mundial. Los encerraron 10 días en el INCAE y el mandato fue seleccionen las 10 políticas de 1 a 10 que más pueden impactar en las tareas del desarrollo, de acuerdo a un análisis de casos específicos. Cuando fuimos a recibir el informe, que me correspondió hacerlo en nombre del gobierno de Costa Rica entonces, nos encontramos con que el programa número 1, después de un análisis exhaustivo, era precisamente
to invest in programs for care during the early age, from 0 to 5 years of age. A segment of the population that was very much uncared for in our countries. And I don't want to point it out in this way because sometimes this is something that has been seen as somewhat a pejorative as a mere daycare network to take a little load off the working woman, and that is not so. Even though it is true, it allows us to release a very valuable time and human resource of the women so that they can incorporate themselves to the working market. It also, above all, it is allowing us, the municipalities that many times of the educational systems close, that they might be able to start with other different projects. So we level the playing field of the skills of the children all the way from the beginning. And finally, a topic that is also very important, Latin America has in its greatest wealth the young people. That is our main asset, Latin America and Central America. And CARE network, what it is pretending is to avoid, for us to guide ourselves to some of the countries, to the level of some of the European countries that have been generating an elderly aging of their population, and therefore, well, affecting everything that is the balance of the demography. I'm going to see what's happening with, we can use that microphone. There's microphone problems, I'm sorry. We've got some microphone problems. But I finished
Muchas
anyways.
gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you very much,
Tal vez una
President.
pregunta a la juventud, un empresario de
And
energía.
we have a businessman from the energy sector.
Hello.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Alejandro Brenes. I'm the founder of an energy company in Central America and a global shaper. Central America has significant renewable energy resources. Our economies are bashed by the volatility of oil energy prices. Because our renewables takes longer to put online, also delays and local oppositions are taking us in a default state that we're using more fossil fuel, taking us farther into our regional goal of a more sustainable energy mix. And on top of that, we have earthquakes and frequent severe weather that makes our electrical system vulnerable. Saying that, how can we accelerate the investment in more sustainable energy? And what are the opportunities and possible role of the US and US companies to work with Central America and to advance in a more sustainable energy mix that the region needs, and to reduce the volatility of our electrical system? Thank you.
Well, I have to say that all of the SICA leaders that I met with yesterday emphasized this issue of energy. President Perez, President Martinelli, and President Chinchilla all focused on the fact that electricity costs here in Central America may cost 3 times as much as they do in Washington, D.C. And that's a huge structural disadvantage for businesses and families in the region. So this is something you're going to have to fix. Now, the good news is that you've already made enormous progress in renewable energies in ways that, in fact, are well in advance of what other parts of the world are doing. The fact that Costa Rica is already getting 90% of your energy from renewable sources is a great achievement. And it means that you've got technology and expertise and a tradition of renewable energy in the region that you need to build on. And what the United States can do, I think the most helpful thing we can do is work with you because we have a common goal of creating more renewable energy sources. Let's collaborate on research, technology. Let's network companies that are advancing new renewable energy strategies and see if we can have more joint ventures and projects. Because it's my view that if any of us find good answers to renewable energy, that will spread like wildfire and everybody will ultimately benefit. It almost doesn't matter where the innovations occur because they'll be readily transferable around the world. What I also understand is that we're not going to immediately be able to transition off of traditional sources of energy, fossil fuels like oil and gas. And even Costa Rica, it's getting a lot of renewable energy, but it's still got to make up that difference. And that's going to be a transition for all countries over the next 20, 30 years. And it's true that because of the extraordinary advances in technology that we've made in the United States, we are likely to be a net natural gas exporter as soon as 2020. And so one of the things that I've discussed with your presidents is how can we potentially use that as a bridging mechanism. I've got to make a decision, an executive decision broadly about whether or not we export liquefied natural gas at all. But I can assure you that once I make that decision, then factoring in how we can use that to facilitate lower costs in the hemisphere and in Central America will be on my agenda. The last point, which Arturo mentioned, but I can't emphasize enough, whether you're talking about traditional energy sources, renewable energy, setting up structures and regulatory regimes for creating economies of scale and efficiencies are critical. I was mentioning that, in California, the utilities, when they produce energy, during non-peak hours, they ship it across the border down to Mexico. When they have peak hours, they bring that energy back to California. And because of not only the technology, but also the laws that are in place, that saves consumers money on both sides of the border. And given the small size of many Central American countries, it's critical to create a regional market. And that's not just transmission lines. It's also, having the rules in place that allow the free flow of energy back and forth. People get nervous about that because, they're worried, well, Panama's going to steal my electricity, and then, Costa Rica, I don't know, maybe they're going to poach some of our power. But the truth of the matter is that everybody stands to benefit. And we'll work with the American Development Bank. We put forward, I think it was last year, maybe it was the year before, when we initiated the Connect 2022. And so our goal is to use whatever convening power we have to network with the private sector as well as the public sector to find ways to enhance that integration. If you can solve this problem, it will free up resources for early childhood education. It'll put money in the pockets of consumers, and the economic benefits will be extraordinary. So we look forward to partnering with you on that issue.
Arturo,
Well, yes, I think the microphone is not working okay, but they just fixed it. Well, you see, what I like to do is take advantage of this opportunity to indicate what we talked about yesterday. And I have my colleagues from Panama and Guatemala, and I just wanted to express that perhaps the issue that received the most emphasis is the concern of Central America in the energy area and the opportunities that we see based on the decision that perhaps President Obama will have to make about the eventual exports of gas. However, we believe that we could maybe set a mandate in the regional level with the participation of the IDB to maybe analyze the basic conditions using the regulatory framework from the point of view of the shared infrastructure that would be needed from the point of view of channels and distribution networks. In case, and using the CAFTA platform, Central America can consider the possibility of importing natural gas from the U.S. at very competitive prices. Every country has its own challenges, I know, in the energy sector, more dealing with renewable, non-renewable, which is not the case of Costa Rica. We're all sharing the concern having to do with the high cost of energy, and I guess we have the responsibility of moving in that direction. There are strategies, but we're sharing the idea of moving ahead, especially taking into account the initiative that President Obama will take in a few months.
Let me take advantage of my position now. Let me ask you, both of you, a follow-up question on the early childhood point. We all agree it's critical. as you mentioned in that, what was called La Consulta de San Jose
Sí, sí.
in 2008, that was the top social investment that could have been made for Latin America in general, early childhood. You mentioned, President Obama, it's hard for everyone to gather the fiscal resources to invest in these innovative, very valuable, socially valuable programs. How do you go about, in both of your experiences, creating such social demand or social support for measures like that that imply greater resources and the need for greater resources?
Well, first of all, at least in the United States, and I'm almost certain, I haven't looked at the polling, but I'm sure it's true in Central America. Selling people on the importance of education is not difficult. People understand, even those who don't have an education understand that in this economy, if we don't have a highly skilled, highly trained workforce, then we'll lose. And I think every parent has aspirations for their children to do even better than they did. And the only way that's going to happen is if they're getting an excellent education. So I think generally the issue's not going to be, will there be social demand? I think, number one, it's making sure that education reforms are in place so that we are using the money that we have as effectively as possible. In the United States, what we found is that sometimes money in schools is not are not well spent. And our schools, we've had public schools for a very long time, but many of them were designed back in the 1800s in a largely agricultural society. Now the needs are different, and we've got to adapt. We also have new tools, like the use of technology and distance learning that can reduce costs and improve outcomes. We have to spend a lot of time focusing on teacher quality and training teachers so that they're up to speed on the best practices to improve learning. But I think it is actually easy to get public support around education. What's harder is to A, make sure that the money's well spent, and B, recognize that, as is true for businesses, it's also true for governments, you have to prioritize. And you have to decide, all right, if we're going to spend more money on early education, then we're going to have to either increase revenue through taxation, or we're going to have to stop doing some other things that are less important. And that's part of what democracy is about, is having that debate. One last point I want to make about education. A lot of studies have shown that the single best indicator of a country's development and advancement is how does it treat its girls. If you are not educating half the population, if you're not using all the opportunities or providing opportunities for all the girls in your country, you will fall behind. And it's been said before, the advantage of when you're giving a good education to girls is you're also going to be educating the children of the moms. And so making sure that social equity and gender equity is built into our education agenda, especially around things like math and science and engineering, where traditionally a lot of times young girls are discouraged because it's viewed somehow as not their subjects. That's something that we're spending a lot of time on, and we'd be happy to collaborate with SICA and other organizations to find ways that we can make sure that we're encouraging young women are getting the exact same opportunities as young men are getting.
Well, we need to wrap up due to our time constraints. But I'd like to hear from President Chinchilla first, and then President Obama, maybe some closing remarks and parting words. Presidenta, ¿quiere tal vez dar unas palabras de despedida?
Well, in reality, I haven't really decided
to talk much because I think that the opportunity that we have today, especially to listen to President Obama, but I basically wanted to share with this community of leaders representing the Central American countries and different sectors that just yesterday was a pretty hopeful day, not only in those Central American relations, but also in their relationships with the U.S. beyond the differences that perhaps we may have in the bilateral agenda. In reality, there was a lot of congruence concerning the priorities that need to be established in the regional agenda, in the Central American agenda. We particularly mentioned 6 issues: institutional strengthening, which is something that was very much highlighted. And this is not just in terms of regulatory policies. If we want to be efficient and effective against organized crime, undoubtedly an integral and transparent institutionality is perhaps the only one effective mechanism of defense and prevention. We also talked about the possibility of using the exceptional platform that CAFTA represents. Central America is actually the one region in the world that has been able to show throughout the time that we have a process of economic integration that is successful. In addition, it's the only one region that has been that has negotiated with the two biggest markets in the world, the United States and Europe. It was a clear mandate to promote every facilitation measure in trade that if and to make sure that if it's true that we were able to grow 70% with our commercial exchange with the United States, that we can do much better if we face pretty decisively all this platform of facilitation of trade that is yet to be done. We also put emphasis to micro-entrepreneurships, including the participation of young people and women. We would like to share with President Obama the initiatives having to do with small businesses that are being promoted by him and that are a part of the priorities of the programs developed by SICA. Infrastructure and energy, I will not repeat them. They have been basically talked about, but I would like just to mention a couple of issues that I guess are generating a pretty hopeful panorama. One is security has been a challenge for Central America, but the fact that we have put security or included security as an element of an integral strategy, I think it's beginning to give Central America a new notion on how to face this successfully. Washington is part of this vision, and now what we have to do is to be coherent with the development of a platform that would allow us to be effective and efficient in the struggle against violence. Costa Rica is showing that we can do it successfully, that we can fight against crime and violence if we do from a balanced platform that is integrated. And finally, human development. Undoubtedly, President Obama has had this as a permanent call, the investment on education. And we're not just talking about any type of education, the one that is being required by Central America. Therefore, we insisted on how to take advantage of existing programs with which the United States has honored us for a long time, such as the Peace Corps, to promote bilingualism, to promote an education that is more innovative, to be able to exchange more opportunities by having students going back to the United States. The scholarship programs then are essential. And I would like to finish by saying that the entrepreneurial sector is here, and I would like to take advantage of the presence of President Martinelli and President Perez from Guatemala to integrate the business world into this initiative. It seems to me that the contribution of the civil society together with other contributions is fundamental. The issue of being able to work in partnership with these sectors is essential. Therefore, we commit to be able to put this on the table in the future. And finally, our populations continue to demand how much is the United States going to contribute. And we heard President Obama talked about an economy that is trying to move forward, getting out of serious fiscal problems that he is facing.
We cannot just as we cannot assume or maybe have the moral authority to ask the American society to finance the things that we should be financing. It may be one of the biggest tasks if we really want to obtain the respect of our partners in developed countries. What we have to do is to have fiscal systems which are more egalitarian, more transparent, and much more efficient. There is a big load on the financing of development that continues to be our own responsibility in Central America. Thank you very much.
I just want to thank this wonderful institution and the people of Costa Rica, as well as President Chinchilla, for giving me this wonderful opportunity to interact with outstanding business leaders and civil society leaders. The main message that I have is that the United States recognizes our fates are tied up with your success. We want to be a partner. I've said this before, and I will repeat, we don't think there are senior partners or junior partners in that partnership. I think it's a partnership based on equality and mutual respect and mutual interests. If you are doing well, we will do better. And if we're doing well, we think your situation improves. And so through all the various forums that we have, let's continue to build. And let's recognize that in this global economy that we now live in, that for us to be successful, we're going to have to further integrate, and we're going to have to use not just the powers of government-to-government relations. It's going to be people-to-people, business-to-business. It's going to be networks. It's going to be private sector, public sector, non-for-profits, all working together around common goals. And I think this forum is an extraordinary opportunity to build on the talents of a lot of people from a lot of sectors around the region. We look forward to working with you. We look forward to partnering with you. And I have to say this visit has made me extraordinarily optimistic about not just the future of the United States and the future of Central America, but the entire hemisphere. So thank you very much.
Thank you for